If you are taking Amlodipine, Losartan, or Lisinopril for blood pressure, I need you to stop what you are doing and listen very carefully. Because what I am about to tell you is not a small detail. It is not a technicality. And it is not something you can afford to ignore just because your prescription bottle didn't mention it in bold letters. Every single morning, millions of adults over 60 wake up, go to the kitchen, reach for their pill organizer, and take their blood pressure medication exactly the way they were told. They trust that if they swallow the pill, they are protected. They trust that if something dangerous were happening, someone would have warned them. And yet, so many of them still end up feeling dizzy, weak, swollen, off balance, exhausted, or strangely unwell without ever understanding why. They think the medicine is failing. They think their body is just getting older. They think this is simply what aging feels like. But very often, that is not the full story. Because your blood pressure medication does not work in isolation. It works inside a living body that is constantly reacting to what you eat, what you drink, how hydrated you are, and what hidden ingredients are quietly showing up on your plate every single day. And that means one uncomfortable truth needs to be said clearly. There are foods and drinks that can push against your medication, intensify its side effects, or change the internal balance your kidneys, blood vessels, and heart are trying so hard to maintain. Your appointment was probably too short for anyone to explain that properly. No one sat you down and said, "Here is how your breakfast may be affecting your blood pressure pill. Here is how your seasoning may be changing your potassium. Here is how your healthy processed food may be working against the exact medicine you depend on." So today, Dr. Clara Hoffman is going to break that down for you in plain English. We are going to talk about the foods that can become a real problem when you are taking amlodipine, losartan, or lisinopril, why they matter more after 60, and what your body may already be trying to tell you before something more serious happens. And before we dive in, if you believe more people need to hear the kind of medical information that usually gets squeezed out of a rushed appointment, take 1 second right now and hit the like button. It helps this video reach the people who need it most. And if you have a spouse, a brother, a sister, or a parent taking blood pressure medication, share this with them now, because one small change in the kitchen can sometimes prevent a very big problem later. If you are ready, let's begin with the first and most overlooked danger, potassium overload. If you take lisinopril or losartan, this is where you need to pay very close attention. Most people have spent years hearing the same health advice. Eat bananas, eat oranges, eat tomatoes, eat avocado, add more leafy greens, use salt substitutes instead of regular salt. And for the general population, that advice often sounds reasonable. But once lisinopril or losartan enters the picture, your body may not handle potassium the same way it used to. These medications can make it easier for your system to hold on to potassium. That sounds harmless until you realize what happens when that retained potassium starts to stack up day after day. Now your healthy choices are no longer just healthy choices. They can become part of a silent mineral overload your body may struggle to clear efficiently. And here is where many people get blindsided. The biggest trap is not always fruit. It is often the salt substitute. A person hears they need to lower sodium, so they stop using regular table salt and switch to a Heart Smart substitute. But many of those products are loaded with potassium chloride. So now, without realizing it, they are taking a medication that can raise potassium retention while also seasoning their food with concentrated potassium. That is how good intentions turn into dangerous chemistry. And what does that feel like? Sometimes it starts subtly, a little more weakness than usual, a strange heaviness in the legs, palpitations, fatigue that doesn't make sense, a feeling that something is off, but not dramatic enough to describe clearly. That is exactly why it gets missed. Because people blame their age, they blame poor sleep, they blame stress. Meanwhile, the real issue may be happening in the background. If you take lisinopril or losartan, you need to be much more careful with high potassium foods in excess, potassium supplements, and especially salt substitutes, unless your own doctor or pharmacist has told you exactly how to handle them. Now, if that already made you rethink what is sitting on your kitchen table, stay with me, because the next category is even more deceptive. Hidden sodium. This is where people think they are doing everything right and still cannot understand why their blood pressure remains stubbornly high. Let me explain. Most people imagine sodium as the salt shaker. They think if they stopped adding salt to their food, they solved the problem. But that is not how modern food works. The real sodium overload is often hiding in the packaged, processed, and convenience foods people eat every week without a second thought. Soups, deli meats, bread, crackers, frozen meals, sauces, condiments, low-fat dressings, canned foods, even foods marketed as light, wholesome, or heart-friendly. That is the trick. The front of the package sells reassurance. The back of the package tells the truth. And if you are taking amlodipine, Losartan, or Lisinopril, those sodium-heavy foods can work directly against the goal of your treatment. Your medication is trying to help reduce pressure in the system. Excess sodium pulls water into the bloodstream, increases volume, and places more strain on the very blood vessels you are trying to protect. So what happens? You take your medication faithfully. You assume it should be enough. But breakfast, lunch, and dinner keep quietly pushing pressure back up. It becomes a tug of war between your prescription and your pantry. I have seen so many people say, "I don't understand why my blood pressure is still high. I'm taking the pill every day." But then you look closer and find canned soup at lunch, deli meat in the afternoon, salty crackers at night, and bottled sauces with dinner. This is not a character flaw. It is a hidden pattern. And if you do not spot it, your numbers may never make sense. So the rule is simple. Stop trusting the marketing on the front of the label. Turn the package over. Read the sodium. That is where the real story lives. If this is helping you connect the dots, hit the like button right now, because this is exactly the kind of information families wish they had heard earlier. Now let's talk about something many people never think of as a blood pressure issue at all: alcohol. A lot of adults treat it as harmless because it is familiar. A glass of wine with dinner, a drink to relax, a small routine at the end of the day. But if you are taking blood pressure medication, alcohol can create a very different effect than it used to. Amlodipine relaxes blood vessels. Lisinopril and Losartan also work within the pressure regulation system that keeps those vessels and your circulation stable. Alcohol can add to dizziness, intensify lightheadedness, and make it easier for your blood pressure to drop in ways that feel unpredictable, especially when you stand up quickly. And after 60, that matters more than people realize. Because one moment of dizziness is not just one moment of dizziness. It can become a fall, it can become a broken hip, it can become a hospital stay that started with one drink and one unstable step. But there is another layer here. Alcohol can also contribute to dehydration. And dehydration is one of the most underestimated reasons people on blood pressure medication start feeling terrible. Your blood volume drops, your system becomes less stable, you stand up and the room spins, you feel washed out, foggy, unsteady. And because it happens slowly, many people never connect it to what they drank or to the fact that they simply did not get enough fluid. So if you take these medications, do not assume alcohol is nothing. Pay attention to how your body reacts. Timing matters, quantity matters, hydration matters. Now let's move to a food that surprises people because it does not look dangerous at all. Licorice. Not every sweet on the table is just a sweet. Real black licorice can interfere with blood pressure control and push your body in the wrong direction by affecting fluid and mineral balance. That means if you are taking medication to control your blood pressure, something as innocent looking as a candy habit can add confusion to the picture and make your readings harder to stabilize. This is why I always say that older adults should stop assuming that if something is sold in a grocery store, it must be harmless in the context of prescription medication. It is not just about whether the food is natural, it is about what it does inside the chemistry of your body. And that brings me to one of the biggest daily triggers people refuse to question: caffeine overload. Now let me be clear. This is not about one small cup of coffee for every person on earth. This is about the pattern. When you are already taking medication to manage pressure in your cardiovascular system, large amounts of caffeine can temporarily push heart rate and blood pressure higher, create jitteriness, and make some people feel as if their medication is inconsistent. What often happens is this: the person takes their pill in the morning, then follows it with a large coffee, maybe another one later, maybe a highly caffeinated tea or energy drink, and then wonders why their body feels shaky, flushed, or strange. They start to think the medication is the problem. Sometimes the bigger issue is the clash between what the medicine is trying to stabilize and what the stimulant is trying to provoke. The key is not panic. The key is awareness. Notice the pattern. Do your readings run higher after strong caffeine? Do you feel more lightheaded on days when you mix medication, little food, and a lot of coffee? Do you get that racing sensation and assume it came out of nowhere? Your body usually leaves clues before it leaves consequences. And that leads us to the food category that may be sabotaging you while pretending to help you. Healthy, convenience foods. This is where some of the worst confusion begins. Protein bars marketed as smart choices, low-fat frozen meals, instant soups, packaged oatmeal cups, turkey slices, whole grain crackers, veggie chips, prepared wraps. People buy them because they want to do better. But what they are often buying is a polished health message wrapped around excess sodium, preservatives, and ingredients that keep the product shelf stable, not body stable. That is the heartbreak of it. So many adults over 60 are trying, truly trying, and yet their food environment is designed to make unhealthy things look responsible. Your blood pressure medication cannot completely protect you from a daily pattern that keeps loading your system in the wrong direction. And no, this does not mean you need to become obsessive. It means you need to become informed. Now, I want to talk about something even more important than any single food: your own symptoms. Because your body is often the first warning system, long before a crisis. If you are taking Amlodipine, Losartan, or Lisinopril, start paying attention to these signals. Do you feel dizzy when you stand up? Do your ankles swell by the end of the day? Do you feel irregular pounding in your chest? Do you feel weak for no clear reason? Do you notice that certain meals leave you more washed out, more bloated, or more uneasy? Do not ignore those patterns. Do not dismiss them as just getting older. And please do not wait until your next routine appointment if something feels consistently wrong. Because the truth is, the body whispers before it screams. And people who learn to listen early often avoid the worst outcomes later. So here is the Dr. Clara Hoffman action plan I want you to remember this week. First, check your kitchen for potassium traps if you take Lisinopril or Losartan. That means salt substitutes, potassium supplements, and repeated heavy loading of high-potassium foods without guidance. Second, audit your sodium. Do not guess. Read labels. The biggest problem is usually not the salt shaker. It is the processed food. Third, be careful with alcohol, especially if it leaves you dizzy, dehydrated, or unsteady. Fourth, watch the stimulant pattern. If heavy caffeine seems to make your numbers or symptoms worse, take that seriously. Fifth, stop brushing off your symptoms. Dizziness, swelling, palpitations, weakness, and unexplained fatigue are not random details. They are information. You are not powerless here. You do not need to understand every biochemical pathway to protect yourself. You just need to stop living on autopilot, because the difference between a medication that helps you and a medication experience that confuses you often comes down to what is happening in your kitchen every single day. Thank you for trusting Dr. Clara Hoffman with your time today. If this helped you see your medication in a completely different way, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone you care about. One conversation, one grocery change, one label check, one smarter habit. That is sometimes all it takes to protect a heart, prevent a fall, or avoid a complication no one saw coming. Stay informed, stay observant, and I will see you in the next one.